box with such a story, unless he were a very close friend of yours that you liked, you would say, oh my God, this person's tripping. There's something wrong with this person. You would move away. Let me get away from that person. Because what we're prepared to accept in the past, we're not prepared to accept in the present. And in the present, when people talk like that, we think that they have something wrong or they belong in a loony bin. But in ancient documents, we entertain it. My only point on that regard is whatever we're not prepared to accept in the present, we shouldn't accept in the past. A person says to you, today I saw an angel, and you say, oh, come on, get off it. You should say the same thing the person said in the past. If a poet comes and says to you, Angel Gabriel dictated the Quran to me, to my mind, you should treat that with the same sort of dubiousness that you would do it if this gentleman came to me. He said, last night, Professor Eisenman, you know, the Angel Gabriel dictated this poem to me. I'd say, oh, okay, fine. You know, you wrote a poem last night and you thought the Angel Gabriel dictated it to you. That's the way you put it. But you actually wrote it. And that's what we should say in the past about people who make claims for supernatural revelation, I think. In any case, in a university class, we can't go beyond the natural. So if material is in these narratives that are supernatural, I think we just have to skip it. You say, well, you wouldn't say the same thing about the Old Testament? Oh, absolutely. What? Do I think Moses stood up with a stick and parted the Red Sea? Do I think that lightning came down and wrote on tablets on Mount Sinai? Do I think that Moses put his hand into his shirt and it turned leprous and then he pulled it out and it was real? Do I think that Moses and Aaron threw down their stick and it turned into snakes? No, of course not. Of course not. These are literary devices that the poet adds to awe us with the events that he or she is retelling. Anyway, so the first part of Acts is not on the same level as the second part of Acts. That's the whole point. The second part of Acts, 16 onwards, doesn't have this, and therefore I consider it to be historical, or at least partially historical. The first part, I will reserve judgment on. However, it's missing this material here in Clement. There were, however, two Jameses, one called the Just, who was thrown from the wing of the temple, we're going to hear about that, and beaten to death with a fuller's club, and another who was beheaded. We talked about the beheading of the second James, which is described to some extent in Acts right before the first James, or vice versa, the beheading of the first James before the second James is introduced. And I can show you what I mean by that. I can pick up Acts here and show you that this beheading, which I think occurs in chapter 13. Let's see, chapter 13. No, 12. And at that time, Herod the king, it doesn't mean Herod the Great. That's the problem with Acts. The writers are not specific in their generational insight. And they mean by this either Agrippa I, who reigned in around 40 to 44 AD, or his brother Herod of Chalcis, who reigned 44 to 49. It sounds like he means the brother, though it's called Herod, and Herod these were both kings under Claudius's reign. Stretched out his hands to do evil to some of those in the church, and he killed or beheaded James, the brother of Jesus, with the sword. Pardon me, James the brother of John. That's a verbal slip. James, the brother of John, with a sword. And seeing that it was pleasing to the Jews liked this supposedly, he went further to seize Peter too. You see, the Jews are the enemies and the devil people throughout all these narratives. And it's very sad, because that's what provokes people to become murderous in turn. And it's provoked 2,000 years of very murderous behavior, which I think any believing Christian would want to eliminate from a religion that's supposed to be full of compassion and love. And so until these are eliminated, the love will never be fully expressed to my mind. And I've spoken to Christian theologians about this. I've been to Auschwitz with Christian theologians, I met some from Princeton who are redoing the Bible. And I saw one crying about Auschwitz, and then he went to Krakow and he gave money to Jewish cripples and beggars and so on and so forth because he felt so bad about everything. He's a theologian, well-known Christian theologian from Princeton who has authority in a lot of these matters. And he was telling me at the same breath that he was giving money to these Jewish beggars who had experiments performed on them in concentration camps. He was saying, oh, you know, we're doing a new translation of the New Testament. I said, oh, that's wonderful. His name was Charlesworth, the guy's name was Charlesworth. That's really great. I hope you're going to do something about the anti-Semitic passages in the New Testament. Oh, no, he said, we couldn't touch those. We're going to make God feminine. I said, oh, it's great, it's great. You're doing really good work, you know. So all of his maudlin displays of fellow feeling and remorse were worth nothing because he wasn't willing to even face probably what was one of the most extreme causes of all these things. I didn't speak much with him again after on that trip because it was useless to speak to such a person who was just making shows of his charity and compassion. He was really not willing to come to grips with the real causes of these things. So, no, he couldn't do anything about these anti-Semitic passages in the New Testament, so then we can't do anything for him either, because he's not willing to come to grips with the real causes of what all this misunderstanding and hatred are. In any case, here's one right here, and the Jews approved of the beheading. I don't think the Jews in Josephus ever approved of the beheading of any revolutionary leader, whoever he is. I've never seen that in any page in Josephus. This is just nonsense. I just dismiss the historical testimony of this document, however holy it's supposed to be. On that one sentence right there, never mind. It pleased the Jews to behead someone in Palestine. Never pleased any Jew at all, because they were the ones who were suffering it. And why was this person beheaded? And who was this person really? So you can dig through this. In any case, that James is eliminated, and then 10 lines further on, Peter escapes from prison. An angel rescued him. Well, okay. And all the people the Jews expected, and considering it, he came to that. I don't know what he's saying there, but Peter is saying, I can't follow it. But in 12, he came to the house of John Mark, another character who was not introduced to any extent. And he goes there on line 17.